All right, we're live. I'll wait for some people to join in. Um, Usually takes a little bit, a couple minutes to get some people joined in or not. Of course, like usual, we got everything put together at the very last second, no matter how much time we get. Things always come up. All three of us are essential workers, apparently, so we're all on different schedules, just trying to make everything work. So, as most of you guys know, tonight's discussion, this is episode number 5 of the SoCal Kayak Anglers Lockdown Live. Takes a little bit, and this is, we put this together because of what's going on with the virus and the COVID-19, which is something that we can't talk about on here. So I'll say that like I always do for every episode. That's the last time we're going to mention the virus. What's going on, David? Thanks for tuning in again. So again, no virus talk. This is episode 5. We've got 2 guests tonight. Before I bring them on, we'll go over kind of what we go over every week. Before we get started, Kirk, thanks for joining. Nice to see everybody's filing in. Again, guys, this is open discussion. Mark, what's up? Open discussion. The people that came on today are the guys that reached out and were interested in coming on and talking about the topic that we have going on tonight. So again, none of us are claiming to be experts at paddling, pedaling, or putting a motor on a kayak, because there's obviously many different ways to propel a kayak, especially as the popularity of kayak fishing grows. Stuff's changing every year, so we're not claiming to be experts on this stuff, and we want it to be an open discussion. So we would appreciate if you guys would kind of chime in and give us your input on certain things as well, because we're all kind of in different platforms. I know a lot of people have Hobie's, but Hobie's been coming out with a lot of different stuff lately with the 360 and all that. There are plenty of paddlers in our group, and then now the motors are starting to take off, and you're seeing a lot more motors in our club as well. So chime in, let us know. If you disagree with anything we're saying, we've all got thick skin here, so it's good to get everybody involved in the discussion. The outline for tonight. So the way that we're going to do it is I've got 2 guests, Knowles, who's been on the show before and talked about preparing for a kayak tournament, and then Cody Morgan. I'm going to be talking about paddling because that's all I've ever done in a kayak. And then we'll move on and go to Knowles. He will talk about pedaling a kayak, and then we will finish it up with Cody Morgan, who will talk about motors on a kayak. So all we're going to go over is the different ways to propel a kayak with the different advantages and disadvantages of each way to propel these kayaks. So I'll start it off, but first we'll kind of give an introduction to Knowles and Cody Morgan. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Aaron, even though you've been on here before.
Hey, what's up, guys? I don't think I have any kind of list of things to introduce myself, but enjoy getting on here with you, Matt. Definitely looking forward to discussion tonight.
Right on. Thanks. Go ahead, Cody. Cody, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go. It just caught up right now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're going to be on a delay. That's another thing, guys. Remember that we are on a delay, so give us a little bit of time to answer questions and things like that. I forget about that every week. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Cody.
I'm Cody Morgan. I'm a little north of Matt and a lot of you SoCal Kayak Angler guys. I'm up here in Los Angeles, so putting stones in my backyard and Lake Paris and stuff like that. Fish out of...
Okay, well, with that, we will kick it off and get started. I will go into paddling a kayak. So I'll start off with the advantages. Again, A lot of this stuff is going to kind of be basic to some anglers that are on here and people that have been in the kayak game for a long time. And then there's going to be hopefully some people that learn from this. So I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence with anything that we're saying tonight, but it is nice to just go over everything because I'm not exactly sure what everybody's level is at. And there might be some people on here that are just looking to get into kayak fishing. So paddling advantages. The first advantage of a paddle kayak is going to be the price. I think most people here would agree that a paddle propelled kayak is probably going to be cheaper than the other options. Most of us, I would think, got into our first kayak and we were paddling. So that's going to be my most obvious advantage to a paddle kayak is the price. If you want to just get out there, you don't have to have a super fancy kayak. You can get yourself, one from Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods or something like that, a Pelican. I started out in an ocean kayak that I got for $200 on Craigslist. Got a cheap paddle, I think from Dick's Sporting Goods, and I was out there catching fish and finally got off the bank. So didn't cost me a lot of money just to get out there and get a line wet away from shore, which was nice. Another advantage to paddling is the simplicity of it. Being in a paddle kayak, you've got an open deck space. You've got less cables. Usually, you don't have to have a battery, especially you're not going to need a battery if you don't have a fish finder. So it's just simple just to hop in and go and start casting. The setup usually is going to be less time. The cleanup's usually going to be less time. Putting away, loading up, all that stuff is going to be should be a little bit quicker than preparing everything else for the pedal drives and all that stuff for the motors, especially the motors. So it's just simple to have a paddle kayak. Hop in. You've got a crate in the back. Put some rods in, a couple tackle boxes, and you're on the water. Enjoying what we love to do most, and that's fishing. So the simplicity of it is another advantage for the paddle kayaks. Now I'll start talking more about relating this more into tournaments and things like that, since this is SoCal Kayak Anglers, which we are a tournament club. Fishing shallow water is another huge advantage, and this is probably my favorite advantage in my kayak, and part of the reason why I've kind of stuck to the paddling scene longer than most people. But using a pedal drive system or a motor, there is extra clearance needed underneath that boat. So the brands that have the fins underneath them or just the prop underneath them, they're going to have to pull that stuff up if they want to go super shallow. A lot of people don't care about that stuff, but I enjoy fishing very shallow. I enjoy getting my kayak in the back of, say, Harvey's Arm at Lower Otay, where I know it's going to be hard for boats and other kayaks that have the pedal systems or the motors to get back there. So, real flat bottom in my new canoe, and I can just pull up in there in inches of water and still be fine with no worries. Now, I'm not saying that the other kayaks can't do that, but they are going to have to pull up drives, and then that's going to create less deck space and just a little bit more of a hassle than you would if you were in a paddle kayak. So that's probably my favorite advantage, and one that there's not a lot of advantages, and I'll be the first one to admit that in a paddle kayak. I complain a lot about, the disadvantages that I have, and I'll go over those soon, but that's the one advantage that I'm pretty happy to have. So the next one is making adjustments while standing with a paddle kayak. All of us, a lot of us, I won't say all of us, like to stand and fish in our kayaks. And especially nowadays with all the different kayaks that are out there, pretty much any brand makes a kayak capable of you being able to stand in and fish. So with a paddle kayak, I believe that when you're standing and you need to make adjustments while standing, I think it's easier with my paddle to make those adjustments than with a pedal drive system. Now, the motor, maybe not, but the pedal drive system, I've seen guys where they're fishing and then they got to kind of reach down and spin some pedals or kind of shift the pedals forward. And I've always thought that that might be a slight advantage for me with my paddle, because I could spin a 360 really quick in a paddle while standing, or if I get blown over a spot, I could turn around real quick with just 2 strokes of the paddle to one side, and I can flip my kayak completely around. And I could still do that while having a line wet and fishing it at the same time. So it plays a critical role in maintaining or adjusting my position while standing. Okay, the last advantage, I'm doing 5 advantages and 5 disadvantages, and honestly, it was pretty hard to find 5 advantages. But it is easy to maintain, and it's rare to have gear failure with a paddle kayak. And what I mean by gear failure, usually in these big national tournaments where guys are traveling to a lake they're unfamiliar with, you'll read a lot about people breaking their props or breaking their drives on stumps and things that they couldn't see. So that happens more often than people would like. And when that happens to people, if they're not prepared to have another drive system of some sort, they have to go back to paddling their kayak. And now they've got a broken drive that's kind of up in their lap and in their way. So I've always looked at that to where when we were on Kentucky Lake fishing the national championship in 2018, I ran into a guy that was out on the water, and he had just a little paddle like that big, and he was paddling a Hobie back in because he broke his drive. I know a lot of guys do carry 2 drives, which if I had a Hobie, I would probably carry 2 drives on a tournament like that, especially the national championship. But it ruined his entire day of fishing because of that happening. So I've always kind of appreciated not having to worry about something like that on the water, and I know that the odds of me snapping my paddle are pretty slim. I've actually never really seen anybody do that yet. But and then as for the motors, you could always have a problem with the electronics of a motor, the batteries, anything like that. The cable system snap and you can't steer it properly. So just having, not really an option of failure with a paddle kayak unless you forgot your plugs or something like that and flooded your kayak out, which could happen to anybody. So that was my 5th advantage. Getting into the disadvantages now, which obviously in a paddle kayak I've got a lot, but I narrowed it to 5. Disadvantages of a paddle kayak: speed. Speed is probably one of the most frustrating things to a paddle kayak, especially on the tournament scene. It's slow, and it doesn't matter what kind of kayak you have, what kind of stamina you have, and things like that. Eventually, you may get the lead for a little bit, but if you got to go, anything worth a distance at all, you're going to get passed up. And that's just the way it is. So if you're fishing a tournament and you're in a paddle kayak, I recommend having a lot more than just 3 plans to where you're going to fish, because I've made this mistake many times, and that's having a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And when you get to plan A and somebody's already at that spot, you then go to plan B, somebody's at that spot, and then plan C is taken as well. Now you're in trouble. So you've got to plan for a lot more contingencies when you're the slowest out there. And that happened to me recently at Lake Folsom. There was over 100 of us out on the water. Up north, I just let everybody else leave, and then I took what they didn't take. And obviously in a tournament, that's not ideal at all. So the next thing I wrote down, how's it going, G-Team? Thanks for joining. Stamina was the next thing. You're going to get more tired paddling a kayak out of all the other options. And it doesn't matter how great of shape you're in. You are going to get smoked if you plan on fishing these big tournaments that are 8 hours long. And, unless you find a honey hole that's right next to the launch that you launched at, then, consider yourself lucky. But most of the time you're going to be doing a lot of paddling in an 8-hour tournament. Ideally, you don't want to, but if the fish aren't there, you got to go find the fish. And stamina plays a huge role. So I know this sounds a little ridiculous, but I actually make sure to get a good meal in the night before of a big tournament. At least I try to. Almost like a carb loading type of thing, because I do like to travel a lot in tournaments. And then I want to have a good breakfast if I can in the morning, just to hopefully maintain a good enough energy level and stamina to push me through that 8 hours of hard fishing and hard paddling in a day. And then also remember the wind. The wind is a huge factor. Everybody's always checking out the wind while bass fishing in these tournaments, but us paddlers know that the wind could ruin your day really fast, like everybody else. But for us, I mean, it gets you smoked when that wind's pushing against you 20 miles per hour and you're just trying to get somewhere and hunker down. So stamina would be my second disadvantage. Third disadvantage, this is probably the one that hurts me the most, is less casts. So every time that you're paddling your kayak, you're unable to cast, and that's a fact. You can paddle it a little bit of ways or kind of adjust your kayak to make a cast, but I'm talking moving down the shoreline and casting. You just can't do it. Every single time I need to cast, I've got to put the paddle in my lap, and then every single time I need to move a little bit, I got to put the rod down. So unlike the motor and the pedal guys, I cannot propel my kayak going forward in a direction at the same time as casting, unless I've got the wind to my back. But it's obviously, how often does that happen where the wind plays perfect into the direction you want to go? It's pretty rare. So that's probably the biggest disadvantage that I hate the most, is I get way less cast than I believe the average tournament angler that isn't paddling in a kayak. Especially in an 8-hour period of time, I would say that I probably get easily over 100 casts less than most of the competition, which, that could be huge in a tournament. Okay, moving on. This is the fourth disadvantage I have down to a paddle kayak. Less ground to cover. So making those big moves in a tournament, it's going to cause you to burn a lot of time. And back in the day when I was fishing kayak bass fishing, you had an hour before lines in the water. So you could launch and you had an hour. This year, they've gone away from the hour, and most of last year they went away from the hour, and they've done 30 minutes. I took advantage of that hour to the best of my ability, and I would go a long ways. I would use that full hour to try to get to a place that I wanted to get to. Now with the 30 minutes, it eliminates a lot of areas for me to even go look during pre-fishing, because I know that that's probably going to burn too much time for me during the tournament. You've got to factor in getting there, and then you've got to factor getting back is going to take away an opportunity to be catching fish at that time. So what I do is I look for smaller areas to cover, in order to maximize your time with bait in the water. And that's a huge factor during pre-fishing. So pre-fishing, that's a time where you need to cover a lot of water in hopes to find fish, or cover a lot of water in hopes to eliminate water. I obviously can't cover a lot of water in a short period of time, at least nowhere near the pedal-driven kayaks and the motor kayaks. So that's disadvantage number 4. And then disadvantage number 5 was what I recently went through. This was holding position. So this happened to me on Lake Folsom, and I still think about it to this day because it drives me crazy. But trying to hold a position and fish with a paddle kayak is extremely difficult. I use an anchor, just like most of the people that tournament kayak fish. But if you're out offshore and your anchor doesn't reach the bottom, which was the case in Folsom, I was in 33 feet and my anchor only goes to 30. You know, I found a school of fish. I was trying to drop on them, but the wind was blowing me off that position. So by the time I would drop my bait down there, I would only get about 10 seconds to have my bait in the strike zone for that school, and then I was blown off that spot. And all I kept thinking was, if I was able to hold my position with my feet or spot lock with a motor, I could sit here all day above these fish and probably would have got my limit instead of just only catching 3 out of that school. And then the amount of time it took for me to loop all the way back around, get back in line, and then have the wind drift me through that school again was way too much time, only to possibly miss the school with the bait and then have to redo it. And that's just what I kept having to do over and over and over again. If you guys saw my video, and it was driving me nuts thinking if only I had spot lock, this would be a million times easier. So holding that position offshore, over a school, it's almost impossible unless you have slick, calm conditions. And out here on the West Coast, I have yet to go to a lake that after 10 a.m. has slick, calm conditions. Everywhere we go out here, the wind is ripping. It's just how it is. So holding position would be my last disadvantage of the 5 that I selected. And I'm sure there's many more that you guys and myself could think of. But that's going to be it for the paddle kayak advantages and disadvantages. Stand up and bass. Tried fishing the Clear Lake Open on a stand-up paddleboard in 2018. Paddling my ass off to keep up with the Hobies. Yeah, that would be extremely difficult, and especially on Clear Lake. That's not a that place can go from slick calm to 4-foot waves in a hurry. If you guys have seen some of the Greg Blanchard videos where he's been out there and had to pull offshore and get some help. Thanks. Hey, Bass Thumb Shane, thanks for tuning in, man. All right, so that is the advantages, the 5 advantages and 5 disadvantages I came up with from a paddle kayak. And we'll move on now. We'll bring up Aaron Knowles, and he will give us his advantages and disadvantages of a pedal kayak.
Right on, dude. Appreciate it. So I think bottom line on a lot of this stuff is whatever the propulsion system you're using, it's just a tool. It doesn't make anybody like a better fisherman or a better angler. A lot of this has to do with like cost efficiency and what a dude can afford. So even if it's that disgusting boat that Matt had for like 4 years running, that I don't know how it still just held him out of the water, he was still catching fish, man, and that's what it's about. It's about getting out there and getting off the bank and presenting a bait a little bit differently and getting exposure to more fish. So whatever your rig is, dude, who cares? I can't say any of these. I'm definitely not an expert in any of these. Would have liked to have prepared a ton more, obviously. Ode to the last video type. There's not a lot out there, man. This is really just kind of comes down to like personal preferences, how you fish, what you like to fish, what waters you're on, if you're a river guy, if you're a big deep impoundment guy, all of those factors come into play. But definitely going to start with a bit of a history lesson on these, and then kind of move into pretty much all of the topics that Matt already covered, just from a pedal drive perspective. So definitely a lot of sites out there on talking about pedal drive and how that's probably arguably the biggest innovation that's come around into the sport of kayak fishing. It really helped kind of shape the industry. Surprised to see how long it's been going down. This whole thing kicked off in 1997 with Hobie releasing the first Mirage drive. And of course, Southern California, Oceanside, California, it's kind of where all of that started. I been a Hobie hater for a very long time because they're the most expensive rigs on the planet. But I just bought one. So now I'm kind of one of those douchebags also. But I have to give credit where it's due. They kind of started the whole darn thing, especially out here on the West Coast. So 97 was the first drive. The next drive for like mainstream kayak fishing didn't come around until 2008. So it took 11 years for another kayak manufacturer to jump on, and that was Native Watercraft out of Australia. They started with their propel drive. Their big claim to fame there was the first with reverse, because during all of that time, Hobie was one way and it was straight, and there was no 180 drives yet or 360 drives or any of that kind of stuff. Matt, what's the big smile for, man? What's going on there? What's somebody already talking smack? Tell me it's my child.
No, I was just saying paddles can go in reverse.
Paddles can go in reverse. So we'll get there. We'll get there for sure. So during that whole time, I kind of want to jump and look at the main manufacturers out there, when they brought their product to the market, what they are, kind of what those price ranges are, and then really get into the advantages and stuff. So Hobie, and another thing I want to know, like, I found this fascinating while I really only looked into this today. Like, I don't know what the first branded, marketed fishing kayak was. I couldn't figure that out. I was kind of digging, just Google search stuff. But it very well could have been the 2001 Hobie Outback. Had some rod holders on it. Kind of started that way out here. They made upgrades to the drive for a long time, but in 2009, they stepped up again and produced the first pro angler in the 14-footer, and that kind of, with Native releasing their boats at the same time, it kind of really started everything going. 2016, they got the 180 drive. It took them 19 years to get reverse. Kind of interesting with all the technology. They've got MIT engineers on their team. And then, obviously, 2020, the big news now is that 360 drive. So looking at them, I think their cheapest one that I could find today, just like on Austin Kayak, was their Passports. Don't really know anything about them. I know I've seen a couple out there. I think somebody in our club actually has a couple, or has one. But that's got a sticker of about $13.99. And then on the top end of that is the PA14 360, which costs your college tuition for your children, which is $4,799. Moving out of the Hobie land, Native was next. I've definitely got experience there with a Slayer 13 and then a Titan for a while. Solid drives. They've had them out for a long time. Their cheapest stuff out right now, as far as getting into their more of a budget-minded pedal drive, is their Manta Ray Propel. A little narrow, a little faster. That's $15.99, and then the Titan maxes out at about $3,000. I will say on all of these, you talked about gear failures. There's no such thing as like a perfect drive. Like, I'm on just about, I think everybody is, just about like every kayak manufacturer's like Facebook group page of Jackson owners and New Canoe owners, and I was on a Flint owners page for a while at one point. And everybody's got complaints, man. We're beating the hell out of this stuff. Everything has some issues out there. Native's got its own issues, different issues than like the Helix drive on the Wilderness systems. That's kind of the next one to talk about. When I went out for test paddles or pedals before I got the first Slayer, it was between, at that point, the Slayer 13 and the Wilderness System Radar 135. The only reason I went with Native back then was because that drive had been around longer, and it was the first year that their drives were coming out. So pretty much every kayak manufacturer that's like a big player, they all came out and introduced their first pedal drives in 2017 at ICAST and then one other show. It was Jackson, Wilderness System, Old Town, Perception, Feel Free, New Canoe's first pivot drive. Their prototype, at least, was introduced as well at the 2017 ICAST. It took most of them another 6 months, some a little bit longer, to actually get them in production. But it was really 2018 when the wave of all the different options for pedal drives kind of hit the market. Now the competition is all over the place. We're all kind of hoping that at some point this drives the price of these pieces of plastic down. But they all seem to have kind of found their market value. And are comfortable anywhere from $1,500 to $4,500. So you got a couple of options with Jackson as well. They call theirs the Flex Drive, same release date. Their cheapest Flex Drive unit is their Bite, they're $2,100, and then their Big Rig is probably the second most expensive one on my list, behind Hobie at $3,500. Wilderness System's not going to go into each of them, but they call theirs the Helix pedal drive system. Old Town just calls it a PDL. They've actually got with their Sportsman Salty, which is a 2020 model now. That's another one that's pretty cheap entry level at $1,899. I know we definitely got dudes running around with some of the Perception boats. Pilot was the Pilot drive for them. Pescador Pilot is out there, budget friendly, $1,749. Pretty good rig. I know we got dudes running in that one. Feel Free has an overdrive. I don't know. I know. Gosh, dude, you had on last week. Makes rods.
You're talking about Danny, yeah.
Yeah. I know he had, for a while, he had that Feel Free Dorado before he went to the mega New Canoe, craziest fishing machine on the planet. But that's kind of Feel Free's top of the line boat for their pedal drives. That the Feel Free Overdrive is really interesting, and it's just this big mechanical contraption. But it looks totally different than a lot of the other drives out there. You can actually find, looking around today, a ton of good deals on a lot of their Lure 11s, Lure 13s, and the Dorados right now. New Canoe, maybe the two of you can help me out on this one, but I couldn't really tell if it was the H2 Pro drive was first and then the pivot drive, and they just rebranded it. But that's what I think happened.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Okay. So you had the prototype in 2017, a production model kind of in 2018, and it really started being publicly available around 2019, from at least the articles that I saw on it. And I definitely remember, Matt, you talking about that for a while. But for them, it fits on any of their kayaks. It's a bolt-on, an add-on accessory that sells for $1,249. I believe the Flint is still selling for $9.99, so you could throw the pivot drive on it for $22 about. So still real good price wise in comparison. So kind of moving on. You've already mentioned a bunch of these as your disadvantages, so now they are my advantages for my side of the argument. Speed is definitely a relative statement and measurement in kayak fishing. Like, I've had you absolutely out-sprint me in the Titan before because of hole design. There's a bunch of other factors that come into it. It's kind of a big bathtub. But if we were going 2 miles to a spot, I'd probably get there before you. So I don't know if it's necessarily speed or maybe it's just more efficiency. But the big difference there is now we're relying on our legs. and the biggest muscle groups in our body, vice the arms and back and everything else and shoulders. So you get to be a lot more efficient that way. What I have found from the 3 drives that I've been on is once you kind of get used to it, it's an all-day thing. Like, it's not something where, like, when we were paddling a ton, like, you would just be smoked at the end of a long tournament, and especially like a 2-day tournament. But with relying on your legs and those muscle groups, like, you can just go and go and go. So the second biggest one, and again, one of your disadvantages, is the ability to go hands-free and just fish. And that is probably my top pro on the side for pedal drives, especially being a guy that wants to flip shallow and run shallow bank and make as many casts as possible in a day. With the pedal drive, you absolutely have that option. Now, it's not all hands-free. There's definitely some left hand, right hand rudder control stuff. You're still getting blown around by the wind at times, so it doesn't fix everything, but it definitely helps you keep you going forward down a bank and being able to make a ton of casts. One of the notes on a bunch of the pages I was looking at was talking about level of noise and it being quieter in a pedal drive versus a paddled kayak, and I kind of agree and disagree. It really depends on the person that's holding that paddle or which drive system it is, because there's like straight up like kayakers that are just phenomenal paddlers and talking about perfect entry on strokes and just know what they're doing, and it sounds like they're just gliding on the water. You hear nothing. So for those guys, not necessarily. For a big dumb animal like Matt, who is just pounding the hell out of the water, I definitely see that could be considered noisy. But then I've also had drives that are noisy as shit.
I'll take the big part as a compliment.
Okay. But with drives too, like you're making noise under the water. You might not be making noise above the water, but there's some hole flap or there's some stuff scraping, or you've ran shallow and now you're hitting rocks or sand V and trees. Like, so there's definitely still noise out there. So it can be, it can't be. I took some notes on supposedly it's easier to use a paddle drive or a pedal drive. It is like riding a bike or just doing leg presses if you're on a Hobie. Pretty much anybody could jump in it and make it move. Pretty much anybody could take a paddle and make a paddle kayak move as well. So, but to be the most efficient at it, paddling is actually like way more difficult than you would think it is. To be able to get through a whole day and do it efficiently and do it quickly, you need to have a little bit of skill there.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a full body exercise
if you're doing it right.
Yes.
And I mean, like, I've been smoked out there for sure paddling, and then I just start using all arms or something, and then now my arms are just done because I wasn't using my body, or my back was sore because I was in a shitty position. But it definitely takes some skills and knowing what you're doing to be able to get through a good long day for sure. The last kind of like advantage type thing is really kind of reminded me of a trip to Barrett several years ago with Matt. And I remember him turning purple and blue and kind of hyping out. And we had to stop on the shore because it was cold up there in Barrett, mountain air. But we had done the long paddle back. God, I don't even remember the names of the arms anymore. But the arm to the right. And paddle drip and rain had came down his arms, covered his shirt. Like, he was in all the waterproof stuff, but because of the paddle and the drip coming through, it was coming down all of his hands. So you get soaked. And if you're not doing it right, even in like choppy water, you're splashing yourself. You're getting wet. Like, Not saying that you're going to stay dry in a pedal kayak, but you're not going to have nearly as much like water running down your arms.
I forgot
any
all about that. Oh yeah, I forgot all about that, man. I was frozen. I mean, it was raining hard. It was storming. We were out there, and I had all my dry gear got wet. I ended up just fishing without a shirt. If you remember, I took the shirt off.
Still had a PFD on though, I'm sure.
Yep.
Yeah. So you don't get that with a pedal drive. So is that an advantage? Yeah, I think so. Kind of got a couple of cons. Again, in a perfect world, like I'm gonna have a pedal kayak, but maybe if cost is one of those things that I can't get over, then I'll still go out and fish with a paddle kayak for sure. The cost, like we went over, is ridiculous on some of these. So that's going to prevent some people from going from the paddle to pedal for sure. And there's nothing wrong with that. You talked about it a little bit as an advantage for you. So kind of a disadvantage on the pedal drive side is that shallow water draft. Planking into those rocks, going over cover, big grass mats. I know part of your strategy there in Louisiana was fishing all of that matted grass. And you might not have been able to beat some of those dudes in the pedals or the motors to that edge, but once you got there, you were able to just glide over the top of it and continue to paddle and get back into deeper holes. So on our side, on the pedal driven side, you're just dragging grass and you're having to pick it up. It's more weight. It's bringing you down. It's definitely a disadvantage. You brought up another couple that I didn't have written down, gear failures. For more mechanical systems you introduce, I mean, you're going to have more issues. I absolutely have had gear failures completely ruin my day. That really actually only happened once where it completely ruined my day. And then from then on, I carried spares of everything, spare wires, spare cables, spare rudder, all the tools I needed to make things on the water for either a rudder system or a drive failure. And that is absolutely something you have to take into consideration for your planning on any of these type of tournaments. You got to what if the hell out of all of it and just be ready in case something happens. So one kind of retort on one of your disadvantages, Matt, you talked about not being able to move fast down the bank and stay forward and kind of cover water. But that could also be an advantage too, because like I've absolutely done it myself and watched other guys do it. Because I am more mobile and I can get up to speed faster. Let's say I get a bite somewhere and I just keep going and keep fishing and keep running bank or keep doing that. I move on and you kind of leave fish to find fish, kind of stupid, where maybe a guy with a paddle is going to pick that area apart. We only had one tournament this year so far in the club scene, and that dude anchored all day and just fished the hell out of it. I don't know if he had a pedal or what, but it didn't matter. What I've seen a lot with paddle guys, and especially you, Matt, like you'll hit up in an area, find some fish, get some bait, and you'll throw that anchor down, and you'll work the hell out of it, and then move 100 yards down the bank, and then fish that area. And that can absolutely win some tournaments. So kind of a pro, kind of a con, but it can definitely be used in your favor as well. I think that's it, man. Again, kind of going back to the opening statement, dude, whatever you can afford, just get out there and fish.
Yeah, I agree. Mark actually brought up a good point here. I'll bring us all back in. But I forgot all about this in Louisiana at the national championship. That grass was so heavy in that area that we were fishing that the motor guys and the pedal drive guys actually couldn't beat me to the good spot that me and Mark wanted to get to, just because it was so bad that a lot of them had to pull up and go pedal or go paddle. So that was probably the only time I've ever been in a tournament where I beat everybody out of the gate to get to a spot, but I had bombed on day one, only caught 3 fish, so it didn't matter. I was just getting there to save a spot for Mark, and then once Mark got there, I just handed it off to him. But I forgot all about that. That was the only tournament I've ever been able to beat anybody to a spot. Was I got lucky because it was just grass was everywhere.
Right on.
Okay, so still have 13 people. We've been kind of mixing around between 15 to 13, which is a lot better than last week. I appreciate you guys tuning in. We've covered the advantages and disadvantages of a paddle kayak, of a pedal kayak, and now we'll turn it over to Cody, and he will cover the motor side and kind of the new exciting and kind of where I see a lot of the future of kayak bass fishing going with these motors on kayaks. So go ahead and begin, Cody.
Cool. Thanks a lot for bringing me in, giving me the chance to talk about this stuff with you guys, because this is really exciting. All kind of the same, the pros and the cons of stuff like that. What we're really seeing a lot of now, though, lately especially, is everybody's going bow mount. They're even making their boats with the bow mount, like what Old Town has going with the Sportsman. I don't know if a lot of people have seen it yet, but the Bass Pro brand has actually made their kayak specifically around the iPilot menu. They're going with real more inked out as far as their boat goes, but we'll see how it turns out. We'll see how many people go crazy over that and jump into those boats and see how the performance is next to some of the really good stuff that we see, with like a Native, the build quality, the new canoes and stuff like that. So we'll see. But as far as tournament situations, I've been in both. Okay, so I used to paddle, and that's what I did for a really long time, especially with as much gear as we carry. So it can be a drain for sure. So my first pro to having the mode is just the energy conservation part of it. I found that was not necessarily the speed or getting there so much faster, because the way I have my boat set up, it's not, crazy fast. But just the energy that I'm saving and being able to focus on what part of the lake or what the conditions are telling me on my way to my first spot has been good. And I can set stuff up. I can tie on baits, drink my water, whatever I got to do on the way. So I find that that's one of the best parts.
Yeah, uploading fish.
Sorry, Matt, lost you there for a second.
You're good, man. Keep going.
Good. All right. Yeah. Another thing too, with everybody having their certain price point, that's what kept me out of the market with the bigger, more expensive stuff. Some of the pedal drives that were available when I first got into it, and the motors weren't as big of a factor as they are now. Looking at it now, with some of the stuff that everybody's come out with and the rigging options, there really is a motor setup out there for anybody who who can use their imagination or their DIY-ness to set it up. Not everybody needs a $1,200 Torpedo or a $800 XI3 or anything like that. The motor I have set up currently cost me $120 with the DIY parts and stuff like that. Maybe another $120. So there's options out there for that. Maybe a little bit more options for finding a motor that may work for you rather than a pedal drive system. It just depends. It's all whatever you can afford, whatever gets you on the water. That's all that really matters. So see what you can do. I mean, you can just use whatever you want to think up. I've seen it done on some of the Facebook pages. Seen some crazy rigging of stuff, and hey man, it gets them out there, and they seem to be enjoying it. So let's see what else I got. I mean, it speaks to a lot of what you guys have already said as far as the advantages and disadvantages. Downfall with the motor is got to be the battery and the battery weight. If you can't afford, to go with the super expensive lightweight lithium batteries, you're stuck with the deep cycle marine batteries, and boy, those things are heavy. I know guys like Shane and Alex. They both had really heavy batteries before. They had like diesel power, super lug batteries that were like 70 pounds. I had one for a little while. It was 50 pounds, and you sure do notice it when you're out on the water and having to load that thing up and take it down a ramp on a cart. Boy, yeah, that gets to be a problem after a little while. Shallow
Yeah,
water.
dude, for sure. Just jumping in on the battery shit. Like I had a Group 27 size battery on a rig for a while, and had a back injury at one point. This is last year, and I'm screw it, dude. I'm not taking my motor because the battery is so damn heavy, and to get it down the launch, I had to have dudes help me get the damn battery down there because 70 pounds. I hear you.
Yeah, luckily I was able to get a lithium battery for my current setup, and I didn't have to lug that thing around too long. But my gosh, man, it zaps everything when you're walking down with that, and you just feel it. You feel like the boat's so much heavier when that big old battery's on there. So I'd say that's probably one of the bigger disadvantages. The next being a failure. When you're running electronics like that, you've got all these connections to the battery, to the motor, the steering, what have you. It happened to me in Folsom. I ran all the way to the dam from where we were when we first started. I went all the way down there, and then I trekked it all the way back up, and that's I think I did 6 miles in that, just from going all the way down to the dam and then all the way back up. And sure enough, the motor connection and all that stuff, the breaker flipped inside my battery, and that was it. The battery was not wanting to work the whole rest of the time. I think I had 3 hours left in the tournament day, so I had to pick up the motor and go back to paddling with all that extra weight on there.
Yeah, and it was windy.
Yeah, at the end it was. I just wanted to get as close as I could to the launch, and I just started casting over by the launch. I'm not gonna have to deal with this for the rest of the day. Other than that, I mean, shallow water is not really a big deal. Some debris, you could hit floating debris or rocks or a log or something like that you didn't see. That is definitely a problem. It could break something. But if I could just motor up, I could just paddle in and just paddle out. It could be a pain with all the extra weight, but it's I just got the retract on a paracord, so it's pretty easy. I think a lot of the way the guys have everything set up, they have something similar. So it just depends. Let's see if we got anything else. Working the bank, that's an advantage for sure. I remember a couple months or long before last year, I was at Silverwood. I worked myself all the way back up, and the wind was coming at me. So I just turned the motor on low, and I was able to work the swim bay all the way back to where the launch was from that top main channel, and it was great. Didn't have to really do anything, just set my steering occasionally, and it was cool. It was cool. I wish I would have caught more fish doing it, but that's fishing.
Yeah, it gives you the opportunity to at least try to catch those fish.
Yeah. Let's see. We got any questions?
No, people just chiming in. Mark says he's found that he's got a tendency to ping pong around the lake sometimes and not break down the water as much as he should, which I think that's definitely true. And also, I think we get good at kind of complaining about whatever we have. We can fight a complaint with it. So if when Mark says he gets tired of ping ponging around the lake, then I'm just sitting there stuck in my little 100-yard area, I get angry to hear that because I would love to ping pong around the lake. So no matter what, we're always going to have something to complain about. And we're fishermen. That's what we do. So you got anything else, Cody?
Not really. I mean, coming from paddling for so long, and dude, I paddled at Paris Lake for a long time before I got the motor, and it is a trek. So I know what it's like to paddle. I've paddled with you in tournaments before. The goal is like to get to your first spot and work your way back, kind of thing. And even with the motor, I still have that mentality. So I think if you want to, I would recommend people to try paddling first, and just to get the feel of it, to see. It makes you appreciate having the motor or moving on to the the pedal drives a little bit more, and you can kind of get develop a few different techniques or styles of fishing or working a tournament out different ways when you've gone about it from the ground up, per se.
Yeah, I agree. It is kind of hard when you get that question of, what kayak should I first start out on? Because you're going to get a lot of people that I would say most people say jump right into a good one before getting a bad one. But I'm kind of glad that I got a cheaper, more simple kayak in the beginning, and I still have that kayak to this day. And it's good for kids or a friend or a wife, whatever, girlfriend, just anybody that needs to use it. So they have their place. Just in the competitive field that we're all kind of in, and I assume most of the people watching this right now, we all want the newest, latest, and greatest when it comes to rods, baits, kayaks, motors, whatever's going to give us that little bit of an advantage. We all want it, and that's just how we are. So,
yeah, absolutely. I want to jump in for a minute. Cody, you talked about DIY, and in the motor game, like, it's just all over the place. There's that motorized kayak fishing page that I know just about all of the dudes in the club are in, and they've got actuators and pumps and all kinds of stuff going on for some of those motor mounts. But just a quick story of some of the silly stuff I've seen. My dad, he's an electrical engineer, so he's a super geek. He's been running a Bonafide now for a while. I borrowed it for that NC. But he's an older dude, obviously. Like, he's not getting out and paddling with my younger brother in Austin. Like, he was like, if I'm buying a kayak, it's going to have a motor, especially a dude coming from a bass boat. And this dude for several months was cutting heads off of trolling motors, splicing things together. At one point, dude had 2 trolling motors on both sides behind his seat with throttle controls on both of them, and figuring out ways to counter steer and steer and get top speed. The guy was just nuts, but you get to kind of do a lot of that geeking out, and a lot of that was just your $150 Bass Pro Minn Kota Edge type motors. So I mean, there's tons of options out there that aren't $2,600 for a Torqeedo 1103 these days. You got to make your sacrifices for weight and everything else, but you could easily do a motor setup for cheaper than a lot of pedal drives. You just got to deal with the weight.
Yep.
Yeah.
David, you got your answer. Yeah, for our group, SoCal Kayak Anglers, you can have motors, and I know that's kind of in some areas of the country they're not allowing that, but here and pretty much everywhere that I've seen in California, I believe everybody's allowing you to have a motor on your kayak. For the local scene, I haven't seen anybody outlaw any motors. Which, I mean, I don't even have a motor, and I would love if that happened, but I don't think it should happen at all. I was against the motor scene for a little bit, but it is what it is. It's just like new baits, like I said, new kayaks, new baits, new motors. It's all just trying to give us an advantage to, get better, catch more fish, and get divorced.
God, just had something on. Oh, motors. So, and their use. Like a lot of the national tournaments that are on Facebook for a lot of the online stuff, you really got to kind of dig into those rules too. But because there's some out there, it doesn't matter where you're fishing, their rules are their rules, and some of them like don't allow motors for your fishing. Yeah. Like for the Hobie Boss series, like you can use a motor during pre-fishing, but you can't during the tournament. And we got one maybe up there at the Delta in August, and that's like during the tournament, no motor. So just different rules, different groups for sure. But like for Barrett, I don't know if you're tracking. I know a lot of guys have said screw it in the past, but like Barrett is no motor allowed in their rules.
Yep.
But every guy that I know that has a kayak and a motor that's been out to Barrett takes their motor out there, and nobody's ever given them a ticket or anything.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen them with motors out there. I forgot about Barrett, and honestly, we might not be fishing Barrett if these rumors are true. Again, so we'll see. But yep. David says, I noticed on my Native they make a motor mount that allows you to drop in, and my biggest concern with this is equipment failure and having to pull it up and lose the extra deck space. Yeah, Johnny Baird uses that drop-in motor. I think he's got a Minn Kota on his Native. Do you know what Native he has? Is that a Slayer 10?
Yeah, he's got the Native Slayer. He's got the Slayer 10. Okay. And he's been using that mount now for what, a year and a half?
Yeah, and it drops right in between his legs, right?
Yep. And so it would come up and it would rest right on your tray. Depending, like you got to cut the length of the shaft to the right length or whatever, but it would still be just like the length of the pedal drive is how it's supposed to work.
He was saying that he's concerned with that equipment failure and having to pull it up and lose that extra deck space. I've never seen Johnny have it, but absolutely, if that happens, I would assume that deck space would pretty much be extremely limited at that point. Go ahead, Cody.
I fished next to Johnny, and we passed each other a couple times. However, he's got that thing set up, though, man. That thing is quick.
It's fast. Yep. Yeah.
It's definitely real fast.
Some good.
I know questions. He recently went to a 55 pound thrust, and I think he was running a 30-pound thrust like I was for a while. We were both seeing similar speeds, and then thrust doesn't equal speed, but on his frame, I don't know if he might have went to lithium at the same time,
Yeah.
but he definitely got a quickness improvement on that thing.
Yeah, he's fast. I remember at the
Yeah.
OTI tournament last year, I got on it as fast as I could in my paddle, and I was out there in the beginning, like I always do. I can get out there, but then people pass me. But I remember him passing me pretty early. He was moving for sure.
Yep.
But David has a great point. If he ever has failure with that thing, which I haven't seen him out there with failure, he's in a lot of trouble at that point. Because I guess you can leave it down and paddle, or you're gonna have to pull it up. And I know there's not going to be that much room left in that Slayer 10. Another thing that we didn't even really talk about was the spot lock feature on the bow mounts, and how much of a game changer that is for people. That's.
Have Shane type something up. Is Shane still on there?
I'm not sure if Shane is still with us.
That's where everybody's going for sure.
But yeah, I mean, if I would pick right now, if I had as much money as I wanted to mess around with, that's probably the route that I would end up going. But there's pros and cons to that too, for sure. Not as fast. Yeah. That's I mean, I don't know if there's a faster motor out there than the Torpedo, honestly. And that's a good discussion to have. Is I've obviously never ran a Torpedo, but is the Torpedo more of a get you to places motor, or do you go with, say, like a Motor Guide or a Minn Kota with spot lock, to where you're not necessarily going to be flying to get to places, but it's going to assist you with, more on the fishing side of things? Now, I don't know, if Mark could tell us about the advantages of that Torpedo when fishing, because I'm sure you would find some for sure. Yeah, and Mark says he beat him in the back of Harvey's. Those Torpedoes are fast. Mark is fast in that thing. I mean, he doesn't even have it at nowhere near full torque, and I'm paddling as hard as I can just to keep up with it. Those Torpedoes are extremely
Cody, you got
fast.
anything on that? Like, I think it really comes down to preference, man. Like, so when I had the rear mounted type thing and still a pedal drive, like that was the motor was 100% just for long runs, and really to just chill out, like read a book while you're crossing the lake, and headed a mile down the road or whatever, or check tournament stuff, or do whatever. And I think that's kind of where the Torpedo lies. You just do it a lot faster. The 1103 that they're coming out with that's out, is taking a lot of these holes up to 6-7 miles an hour, compared to the older Torpedoes doing 5 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
Not a huge difference, but way faster on just regular pedals. And it's definitely the motor design. But like that spot lock, man, that's so impressive in our world of high wind areas. And if we want to fish deep, like that could be a huge thing. But I think it really just depends on what you want to do, and if you do have a pedal drive, can you sacrifice maybe some of that positioning with a rear mounted motor, or what? Like all of those kind of things kind of go into it.
All right, so I fished with Danny quite a bit, and I fished with him the first time he took that boat out. The Crazy Frontier build with absolutely everything on it except for a rear mounted motor. It's fast. He's got that thing set up just right. With the pedal drive too, and he doesn't lose all that much deck space. Same with Shane. They're all getting kind of similar speeds, and everybody uses it in a different way. Yeah. I've seen, I fished with Shane. We go across the lake. He's just fine. he's slightly faster than I am with the rear mounted, and I've only got the 30-pound thrust, but yeah, he flies across the lake just fine, and then uses spot lock and just stands there. And then I fished with Danny at Paris one time, and he put the heading lock on his XI3, and he's working his swim bait all the way down, and didn't have to do a thing. He's just standing up the whole time. It wasn't herky jerky. It was just nice, steady pace all the way. So that's something that I'm looking forward to, is being the next step, the progression of this thing, kayak bass fishing. Is definitely going with the bow mount and having all that stuff. That to me is creating more of an advantage for everybody. Spot lock for sure. All the Bass Pro guys talk about it with it on their boats, and now we get it on our kayak, and I feel like it's way more important because of how much we slide around the water when it's windy out there. That is, hate to say it, game changer. Right there.
Yeah, Kerry had a good point. Using that torpedo, like we were talking about, everybody kind of uses their own motor to their advantage, and he was saying that it gets him there to his spots quick, and then he uses it slowly to move down the bank and fish, which is another good point. I think everybody kind of has adapted to what they have to make it a strength for them, and they're all comfortable using it. Mike's
so for me. Oh, what do you got?
Mike's joining in. Nice to have you, Mike. We were having issues trying to get him here. I think last week or the week before. But he says, I'm beginning to paddle more and only use my torpedo to get to a spot and hold position. I enjoy paddling a good fast hole with a good bench shaft paddle. Yeah, that's a good point, Mike. The paddle. How important is the paddle if you're a paddle kayaker? Yeah. Oh my gosh. I did not know that it would make that big of a difference until somebody gave me a paddle and changed my entire life. I went from a $30 like Dick's paddle to a $300 paddle, and it was like, oh my gosh, the amount of speed and just the amount of effort that I had to put into paddle with that $30 one compared to my new paddle was night and day. So yeah, that's a really good point, Mike, is getting that good paddle and making sure it's the right length and everything for what you're going to be using, and all sorts of different paddles out there.
One of the things I was looking at there a couple of months ago, Matt, and we were talking about it quite a bit, was kind of diving into that into the bow mount before I got stupid and went the other direction.
As much as we've obviously bag on the Hobie and the expense and all that stuff as more of like an internal for our club, you bought one for a reason. You know what I mean? And obviously they're an amazing kayak for sure. I know that you're joking, but for anybody that doesn't know our club, we do make fun of the Hobie guys for their Hobie Colt and all that, just because I'm jealous that I can't spend a $4,000 on a kayak. You know what I mean? They're awesome kayaks. They've paved the way for kayak bass fishing and kayak fishing. So hopefully we're not offending too many of the Hobie guys. And I feel like if we are, then my door is probably going to get kicked in any second, and they're going to stab me with their pedal drives. So don't come after me. Come after Aaron.
Yeah. But no, I'm kind of one of them too now. But for me, and really it was because of the propel drive. I really felt like I was able to get super dialed in with staying on spots and the stuff that some of the advantages that a spot lock would have. Like, you can do a lot of that with instant reverse and those type of drives and really hold over spots. So it kind of, and then the 360 drive just completely messed me up with the idea of really being able to do whatever you want to in the wind, regardless of what direction it is. So it changed me from that to now wanting to somewhere down the line throw a go fast on the back, and then still be able to have what I think is comparable, although not as great control that you would get from like a spot lock. Kind of for me, that would be like best of both worlds. So that's kind of the plan going forward, because I was looking at both, but that was just the direction I ended up going.
Yeah, and I mean that's what's nice about, you know, a lot of guys in the kayak world kind of like to stay loyal. It's almost like owning a vehicle. You get the people that are just diehard Dodge and diehard Ford, and they just won't steer away from that because that's just all they've ever known. Aaron is definitely not that guy.
No.
He's slept around with many different kayaks, that's for sure. So he was a good person to, you know, he volunteered to do it after I was looking for somebody. And there's plenty of guys, you know, moving forward with this if we want to keep doing this. Tonight was a pretty good showing. Hopefully, you know, I thought the discussion was good. There's plenty of people that I would love to have on here, Carrie being one of them. I mean, just coming on and talking about, you know, OEX, Carrie, if you'd ever want to do that. And I mean, Carrie knows how to put a kayak together, that's for sure. You know, Danny with his rods. Again, you guys just let me know if you want to come on the show, and then, you know, we'll see where the voting goes with that. I know Danny wants to come on. We can get him on and talk about his rods, you know, because I don't really know much about Danny's rods, but I know the people that have them like them. I'd love to hear more about them, you know, and kind of help him out. But if you guys, again, just message me, let me know. I did have some guys message me saying they were comfortable talking about certain things, so just let me know what you're comfortable talking about, and if the voting goes, you know, your way, we could have you on. It's not so bad. No matter what happens, we always have trouble getting connected, for sure. It's always been last minute every week, but you know, that's just how it's going to be with everybody's schedule and all that. And I'm definitely no professional at setting this up. Kind of learning as we go. But you know, from here, I was kind of thinking we've been on for an hour and 18 minutes. And we still have 13 people on, which is awesome. We could kind of open this up. We can keep going down the motor route discussion, or the you know, pedaling motors, or if we want to talk about whatever. This is kind of just the time where, you know, it starts winding down a little bit, and we just kind of maybe throw out some topics that we want to put on for the next vote, and just talk, you know, what's going on. Hopefully we'll be fishing here soon. There's rumors that are flying around like crazy, and you know, obviously stuff is starting to open up a little bit here in San Diego. Hopefully people don't ruin that for us. Santee Lakes is open if you guys want to get a line wet. They are only letting in a certain number of people, which I've heard all sorts of different rumors. I don't know if anybody in here went to Santee Lakes today, but they were open to go bass fishing. I heard the bite wasn't very good. But, you know, for those of you that are new, you can't put a kayak in Santee Lakes. It's just shore fishing. They're still doing the 6 feet rule, obviously, and hopefully people just don't ruin it. Like, you know, the Huntington Beach scene and all that stuff that's been on the news. Hopefully that doesn't affect us here.
Open mic, man.
Anyone fishing this weekend, says G Team. I am not. Aaron was talking about he might be.
Yeah, dude, might finally make that road trip up north. I guess the mighty, Putting Stone or Pudding Stone?
Pudding Stone.
Pudding. We'll go with Pudding. Might head on up that way. I think that's just at the end. Also military dude, so also have that 100-mile bubble
Yep.
without having to do paperwork. So I think that fits. Or it's like 113 miles, and I'll kind of fudge that. So I think that's within my range. Casteac's a little bit farther. I got to get out there, dude. I haven't gotten this damn kayak wet yet, and I just want to play with the drive. Really, I don't even care about the fishing at this point. I just want to go get wet.
Pudding Stone's a good spot for that.
Cool. Good, I can do it. I'm thinking Sunday, man. I'm not sure, but gonna try to make it work.
Marina's supposed to be
Yeah,
open
I'll
again.
probably head to Pudding Stone on Monday.
Right on. I've never been out to Marina before.
That's within 100 miles, dude. For
Yeah.
sure. We need
Yeah.
to try it.
I feel like I'm ready for sure to go, but I don't feel like I've been at as crazy as some of the other people have. But I've also been working, so I think that that makes a difference. If I would be stuck in my house all day, then yeah, I'd probably be thinking about it a lot more. Hopefully, I just want to get back to our local club at least and just see the group and fish with the group. That's kind of what I'm looking forward to. I have more fun fishing with our group than I do by myself. So hopefully we can get out and do that. But we'll see. Shane killed it today, says Chris. Yeah, I'm jealous of Shane and his videos fishing. Everyone's going to be at Pudding Stone, says G-Team. Yeah, G-Team, you've been doing pretty well. I've been watching your YouTube videos. I think at Castaic, right? That's where you did well at. I probably just...
Are those lakes open 7 days a week? Are we the only crazy people on the planet that have weird schedules? Like, I haven't looked into it too much. Obviously, the weekend's good.
Most of our stuff's open
7
constantly.
days.
Like, you just have to be really dry.
Okay.
Yeah, they're really strict on the inspections.
I forgot about the inspections.
Sun up to like sundown, I think, is most of them 7 days.
Okay. Now, and just since we're kind of on it, I don't know what else, unless there's questions out there. Like, is it like Iron Ranger stuff, or are you actually having to like go to a pay booth? Like what is the normal setup for like going up there like first time? Is it super simple? Follow the signs.
Well, it's certain places. There's at all the places here, it's a ranger and a pay station. You pay the person, they give you a ticket, they look at your boat. At Paris, you like fill out the paperwork. I've never been to Castaic, but I've heard they're really, really tight at both spots on the inspection. I don't know about any paperwork or anything like that though. GT, what do you got to do up there? And is it at both that you have to do it?
We'll get that in like 30 seconds.
Yeah,
that big old delay.
From that delay, they'll catch up here. Yeah, we'll see what's going on with us. They're starting to somewhat open stuff here in San Diego. The bays. What's the rule on the bay right now? Do you know that rule, Aaron? I think it's you can bring a boat out
game
there.
On.
Can you fish?
Game on. Yep. I went down talking about taking the boat out Monday, Tuesday with the girls and stuff and do the bay. Went down to Shelter Island launch ramp today, kind of drove that just to kind of see how crazy it was, what it looked like, what the signs were saying. And like they put a couple of barriers to like divide the lanes up, so it wasn't everybody right next to each other. And then it was pretty much go time. When I got down there at Shelter Island, there was several dudes, several pairs coming in, and they had their vehicles down there loading up. So they had rods, reels. I haven't called Harbor Police. I know Steve was out there yesterday.
Yeah.
I believe it was him and the wife, and they were catching tons of spotties, it looked like. So I think Mission Bay is the one on the Facebook pages. Whenever Kerry catches up to this, I'm sure he'll be dialed in. But it looked like Mission Bay is now rolling as well. So yeah, it's if our lakes don't open up, I'm gonna be ocean fishing, I guess.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't so stubborn. I would go ocean fishing as well. G Team says that they're extremely strict at Castaic. He's been turned around for a tiny drop inside of his hole, probably from condensation. So, yeah, so be prepared if people are going to make that drive. I can't.
Yeah.
But, it is what it is. As long as I got work that's, keeping me going, and I just keep buying tackle warehouse orders, I can get through. I can survive. But I'm ready. I've debated. I thought about going to Santee Lakes tomorrow just to go throw a frog around all day long, and just swing on some frog fish from shore. But I know that if they open it up today and it's the first Saturday where it's open, that line at 6 a.m. is going to be all the way down the street.
For sure.
And you're going to be shoulder to shoulder with people trying to maintain 6 feet, and it's just going to be a nightmare. So I'm probably going to wait at least a week or two before I even attempt that. And I'd probably have to get pretty desperate to go there just because that little place is expensive.
We should do that hike if the hike's open. That's what we need to figure out.
The hike is open, and I'm ready to go. If anybody wants to go with me, I'm ready.
Ramona.
Yeah. If anybody wants to night fish Lake Ramona with me, we'll hike up there and go. It should be legal now. If the trails are open like they say, then we're not breaking any rules at that point. And then if you go to the closed lakes, Ramona is not listed on the lakes that are closed.
Okay.
And I know people have been fishing up there because I follow people on Instagram that fish there all the time, and they're fishing there. They did run into a big rattlesnake the other night that definitely you would have been in some serious trouble if you would have got bit by that thing. It was pretty big. It was already eating a rabbit, luckily, but the guy said he almost stepped on it. So that's something just to think about now with the summer coming up, is those rattlesnakes will get out there. They'll be out there. And shoot, I almost got bit by one at San Vicente. He struck and hit my paddle. I didn't hear any rattle from him or anything, and he bit my paddle. I was pushing offshore to get away from the land and to get back more towards the middle of the channel. And when I pushed offshore, I felt something hit my paddle, and I looked down and there was a rattlesnake right next to it. He had struck and hit my paddle in the middle of the tournament. So then he crossed the lake a little bit after. So yeah, for those of you that aren't familiar with San Diego waters, there are rattlesnakes. So
San V for sure, dude. That's the only place I've seen them snakes swimming in the water. No idea what it was. Definitely turned around and went the other way because they move pretty darn quick in the water too. Louisiana was different. You expect to see snakes in there and all those stumps and all those trees and shit. But as far as San Diego, like San V, I think has probably got more of them out there than anything else. Or at least it's the only one I've seen.
On the bay, like some guys are able to go fish the bay, and then lifeguards come out, tell them they have to leave, and then 30 minutes later the lifeguards change it to where, oops, our mistake, you can fish here. So nobody really knows the rules. Nothing's been clear.
All right, Ray. I think I'm gonna have to sign off for the night, and thank you again for letting me come on and talk with you guys and talk with all the SoCal guys. It's been really cool discussion.
No problem, man. Thanks for joining.
Hey,
Right on,
not a
dude.
problem, man. Glad to do it. Thanks,
Awesome. Thanks, Cody.
Sarah. Later.
All right, so now just these two ugly mugs. Still have 7 people, 8
Yeah,
people, 8 people
now what are
viewing.
we going to talk about?
Comments rolling in.
We
They're
just like watching train.
yeah, the train wrecks you don't want to watch. Guys still talking about fishing. It's cool that there's still 9 people watching right now. So if you're kind of just joining in or you were late to the party, we discussed the advantages, the disadvantages of all ways to propel a kayak. And now we're kind of just in an open discussion. Guys are talking about, possibly fishing this weekend. Not really here unless you're going to the bay. For San Diego, Marina is open now, so you can fish there. Central Coast bass lockdown sucks. Yeah.
Agreed.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate you guys watching. Hopefully, people learned something. This topic was recommended and by one of the viewers. I put it up there on the poll, and it won in the votes. Pretty much, its first time being up there. So people wanted to talk about the different ways to propel a kayak, and it's an ever-changing thing moving forward. And I think that everybody right now in this business is kind of trying to find the new latest and greatest on how to get us places faster, just like they do with bass boats, with the new motors every year that come out, and then how to keep us on the fish, whether that be spot lock or.
Where is the May 30th tournament again? Or supposed hopeful please or God?
That's a great question, Mark. It's a question that hopefully Mark can answer. Where is the first tournament after the rescheduling?
Should update that schedule.
It's late May. For some reason, I'm thinking
May 30th.
For some reason, I'm thinking it's Sutherland.
Oh, that sucks.
G team.
I'm searching for it now.
G team says the baby D bomb for late May. Great bait. Great bait. A lot of people down here throw it. I know that. Carrie, good point. Don't forget to wear your PFD. I feel like every week we see, a death somewhere in this country from a kayaker, and they weren't wearing their PFD. It's kind of like seatbelts in a car. You could tell people it over and over and over and over and over again, but unfortunately, I feel like, some people are only going to learn the hard way, whether that be themselves or somebody close to them. But it's a rule. It should be.
Definitely sucks. So,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it is Sutherland, May 30th.
Sutherland, May 30th. Awesome. Central Coast Bass says, glad I'm in North Cali at the moment. Down south is hit hard. Yeah, I've been jealous of the NorCal guys, seeing people still get out there and fish the Delta. I would do anything to go fish the Delta right now. Where are you located, Central Coast Bass? And then Mike says, is it Barrett and Sutherland? They are talking of closing for budget reasons. Yeah, Mike, that's the rumor, is Barrett and Sutherland. 2 lakes that you can catch fish at. So Barrett for sure is going to upset a lot of people, but honestly, personally, I'm more upset about Sutherland. That place is, it's a place I enjoy fishing. Barrett, if Barrett had an easier launch, I would like to fish there a lot more. That launch is a pain in my butt, and paying the extra money and then trying to go through that launch has been a nightmare in the past. And I don't like, cutting barbs and all that stuff, bending barbs down. But I know a lot of people love that lake. Aaron has had some great days on that lake. I'm surprised you're not crying right now just talking about this.
It'll be all right. That one, it's funny. Like you get on SD Fish and how you have the Barrett junkies on the Barrett page, and you just look at that and can't help but feel bad for those dudes because that's like their heaven, man.
Oh yeah.
I, So definitely feel bad for those guys. Like I love that lake as far as like that is the Yuma proving grounds. That is the training grounds to
Yes.
go get confident with the technique that you can't catch fish with anywhere else in San Diego. So for me, like crankbaits or those type of things, being able to throw those out there and get some confidence, miss a ton of frog fish, do that kind of stuff. Had some good days of size for sure. But it's definitely a numbers lake, and it was a lot better last year as far as size.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you talking about some big ones that you had got into. The amount of fish you can catch in a day there is like no other lake here. So
for us.
it's definitely going to hurt a lot of people's feelings just because I feel like a lot of the people that aren't super diehards like us and can go out there and just grind for 2 or 3 fish a day, there's people that just won't do that anymore, and Barrett's all they count on.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
I mean, hopefully we can rally the troops and do what we can. I know Chip Gilbert has done more than you could imagine for trying to keep lakes open.
Yeah, I've seen some of that.
Yeah, so hopefully, he's led a pretty good charge. I know I've signed all the stuff that he's asked, and we'll see if it makes a difference. But hopefully, it doesn't close those 2 lakes. There's better ways. Steve mentioned it, and obviously, we don't really know exactly what is behind the scenes, but when you go to everywhere else in California and they're charging everybody to come to the lake, and they're not experiencing the same problems as we are. So you would think that if budget cuts and everything, they were hurting for money, if you charge everybody that comes through Lake Murray per day to walk around that lake with their dogs or strollers or whatever, you're going to make a lot more money doing that than you are the people fishing it. And I'm obviously not the only one that thinks that, because Steve said the exact same thing that I have thought in the past is why does Southern California not charge other people to use the lakes?
Yeah, I mean, like one of the things, like obviously, like the rules of religion and politics, and not talking about it. I guess fishing politics is a little bit different, but like, dude, I'm scared. Like, if they were to do that and charge all those dudes at Murray and Miramar and those kind of lakes, especially those 2, then they'd be like, nah, we don't need to fish here, so let's close off fishing completely because we're making it. Like, I don't see the sense of it. Line Big's always posting a lot of hate on city stuff, and I just, they don't care, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's it. They just don't care. I mean, I think that's the way to say it best. And it's just an easy problem for them to solve is, hey, let's just close it down. So, bummer, we're on the wrong end.
Yeah.
Central Coast Bass says grew up in Pomona and put as his home lake. So, yeah, Aaron might be coming and fishing your home lake. Don't worry, he won't catch any fish. You don't have to worry about him.
I won't catch anything, bro.
Yeah. He'll just be out there spinning 360s in that new Hobie. Just spinning donuts out there.
That's all I want to do, man.
Larry, what's up, man? This was your topic. We hit it. We did our best. We'll see if you want. I don't know if you're just joining in or if you got to watch it or anything, but Larry was the one that recommended this topic. It won the votes. It's pretty much its first week, so pretty cool to see that. That's why I kind of let this give people the option of filling in a poll that they want to see instead of what I put, because I'm just putting random things that I could think of. So if you guys have an idea of something you would want to to see for the next week's show. Put it in there on the poll, and it may win. And then the other one that was second place, that was added by Aaron, right? You added the second poll, kayak fishing for dummies.
Yep.
And
I felt I was fully qualified to talk about being a fishing dummy.
That took second place. So the two ones that I didn't think of were first and second. Makes sense, because I'm an idiot. But what? Let's talk about that real quick. What is your idea on the kayak fishing for dummies?
I don't know. Like, just had I get to be one of the admins on the page. Should probably look up the stats, but I think it's maybe the COVID or the stuff we can't talk about. Oops, hope I don't get this blocked. But like, we've had so many people join in the last like month or two, at least the page, and I get it. Dudes aren't saying a lot. Some dudes are introducing themselves or something. So I thought it was just kind of like an olive branch, and hey, get people that are thinking about it from couch or wherever to just chat and ask some questions and see what it's like. Or I don't know. I thought it would be a good opener, and we could go a whole ton of different.
Yeah, I was thinking that it would just be an open discussion, but I hadn't talked to you personally on what you were thinking on that one. Kind of just an open mic questions on the kayak fishing locally, kayak fishing nationally, whatever they wanted to talk about. We kind of have people that have done it all, people that have been doing it for a very long time here locally as well. I know we have new people that are here. I think David, who was on earlier, Smallwood, who I believe bought your old native, right?
Yep.
I think he came from Tennessee, military. That's what's cool about our club is the big military scene here in San Diego. We're constantly getting people coming from all different parts of the country. Some that are just getting into kayak fishing and some that have been involved. I think he came from Tennessee. So, we're getting new people in our club that are going to experience San Diego bass fishing. And that's going to be a new shock to them, I feel, especially coming from Tennessee. It's a lot different.
Yeah, dude. I mean, like for us, like it took us probably a year and a half to be able to consistently go out and catch fish on the local lakes. And like we spent a lot of time on Otay early on, a lot of time at Berry. But I don't know if we can help speed that curve up, then that'd be cool.
Yeah, exactly. And it's kind of, it's tough to. I've talked about this with the NorCal guys plenty of times. Me and Wes Jones had a really good conversation about this, which would have been nice to have on here for everybody else to see. But it was in private after a podcast, and he was wondering why our club, because back in those days our club was only in like the 20s, and I kind of opened his eyes to how many kayak anglers we have that only strictly fish saltwater. And that was because a lot of them don't see the purpose of going out paying money to fish for bass when we just release them. And it's like, dude, how do you blame them? I don't blame them. Why do I bass fish? I have no idea. I'm an idiot? I don't know. I don't feed myself. I have no idea why I bass fish. I completely understand their side of it. And you go look at the San Diego kayak fishing page, and there's over 1,000 members easily. And that was a long time ago I looked on that page. What their members was.
For sure.
Yeah. So, and ours is 500, and a lot of those that are, in the 500s or whatever, they still only fish saltwater. So, trying to help people speed up the process of catching bass here is going to help our club grow because it is fun. And people want to catch fish. And when you can go out in the bay and catch spotties throwing whatever you want, and you don't have to pay, I get it. But for some reason, the green fish is just what I like to fish for. I don't know. Can't explain it.
Yep.
So yeah, hopefully we start getting more people.
So one thing I want, dude, free flow wise, and especially on the saltwater stuff, like, dude, I want I'm just putting them out there. I don't know if Carrie's still on, but dude, I want dudes like Perry and Derwin
Yeah.
and Sonny and those kind of dudes that have been fishing in this kayak scene for the last 20 years to come on and give us a history lesson, man. I want to hear more about that Tupperware Navy. I want to hear about the old club days. Like, I didn't even know until our last Angler of the AOY barbecue thing that, like, Sonny was running Toys for Tots type fishing tournaments a decade ago here.
Yeah.
Like in the Bay. Like, I had no idea. And like, I'd love to sit here for an hour and listen to those guys kind of talk about the old days. And I think Richard was down here for some of that too. But like, I'd love to get a history lesson because there's just so many dudes that have been doing this around here for a really long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree. Though they are the OGs of San Diego kayak fishing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for sure.
I remember, talking to Richard Penny about it. When I first started back in 2015 here in San Diego, was who are these guys? Who do I need to meet up with and fish some tournaments? And
Yep.
I do remember Derwin. I remember Kirk. I remember, I think you were there. It was at El Capitan. I think there was only like, 8 of us that came out that day. This was before our club even got off the ground. This was kind of just a little meetup. It was before.
Were you there for the Murray?
It was before the Murray tournament.
SDKF? It was before the Murray.
It was before the Murray tournament. We fished at El Cap with Derwin, Kirk, Richard, and that kind of got me into the scene. And those guys.
Yeah.
And they do it all. Yeah. I mean, Kerry can go out in the bay and catch fish, and then you can go out and throw a secret jig at Hodges and slay fish too. Sorry, Kerry. So yeah, I mean, those guys have, and not only that, but I mean, he works at OEX.
Yep.
So dude lives
definitely down a ton of knowledge, man.
Richard would be another person I'd love to have come on here, and talk about whatever he wants to talk about.
Yeah, let him just.
He's too famous for us now, man. He's crushing podcasts and he's on TV doing soap operas.
Big time.
I don't know what he's been up to. But yeah, still 6 people on. Obviously starting to die down. We've lost over half the people. But almost 2 hours in. For those of you that are newer coming in, we're just chit chatting right now. We finished the main topic, the main discussion. Late May. The question asked earlier: what are people throwing late May? Mark asked that question. Man, top water
depends on where we're at. But
yep, the lake is huge. It's gonna change what lake you're on, for sure. But top water for me, big worms when the sun gets up high, and then flipping and pitching too.
Shady cover, man. Flipping and pitching, and then throwing an A-rig. That's what I want to be doing.
Yeah, not me. You can throw the A-rig.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike is surfboard fishing in the 60s. Mike,
good.
Believe it or not, Mike, I was not surfboard fishing in the 60s. I wasn't. True statement.
True statement.
I hadn't got into it yet. Mike, man, we need to. I haven't seen Mike in a long time. It feels like.
Yeah.
I know.
It's been a minute.
I know he's still positive. Can't. That guy never
Yeah.
has a bad day. Yeah, Larry. Man, that's a good point. Larry's been around a long time too, and I feel like he's been here since as long as I've been here, if not longer. Um, Steve as well. Who knows how long Steve's been fishing in the kayak in
Yeah,
San Diego?
Steve and Tim, and like I don't know if they been fishing freshwater. Obviously, they can wreck on in the bays as well.
Yeah.
I definitely know he's talked about fishing Santee as a kid and all those kind of places. So again, another fountain of wisdom and a ton of knowledge from just the local, and that would be cool to hear as well.
Yeah. Hopefully, people hit up the options and put some stuff they want to discuss moving forward. I mean, I enjoy doing the discussions for sure. Anytime I could just learn, and you're always going to learn from somebody else in this sport. Um,
Yeah, maybe you're not learning from me and Matt, but you're definitely getting a different perspective. Maybe I don't feel like we're qualified to teach anything at this
no, no, definitely the perspective side of things is.
point, but
Yeah, I see the perspective
yeah,
side of things can definitely teach you something for sure.
yeah, you're right.
And that's gonna be where I'll take some notes from and hopefully become better. That's for sure. Especially on stuff that I'm
You're
terrible at and I don't like doing, like the A rig and that type of stuff. Wow, 77-degree water temperature on the lake today.
Where?
I think Chris is talking about pudding stone.
Oh God, I'm not ready for that.
Let's make sure we're on that huge delay. He'll get it here in a little bit.
Okay.
I believe it was pudding stone. If I remember correctly, he fished pudding stone. He said he caught a 20-incher today. 77 degrees. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that means it's hot as hell up there.
I'm curious. Now I'm curious what our water temperature's at in our lakes. Because
66.
we were moving low 60s.
67.
The last lake I fished on was Sutherland, and it was 60, 61. So, who knows where it's at now? Who knows if we're ever going to be
Yeah,
able to
I'd
fish
still
it again?
say mid 60s, mid to high 60s. Because I mean, it's still we get the cooler air at night and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So even with these 80-degree days and stuff, I bet it's still mid 60s.
I feel like 77 is insanely high for this early in the year. Maybe I'm wrong, but that seems.
Yep.
Because we're nowhere near the hottest parts of the year yet. So if it's at 77 now, I had no idea those lakes get that warm. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't
So
know.
spawn in February?
I don't know if I've ever seen. I don't know. Have you? Do you remember ever seeing 80s in San Diego water temp?
Nah, I don't think so. I'm trying to think of what our shallowest lake would be, or dirtiest lake. I don't think so, man.
Yeah, I've seen 70s.
Oh, good Lord. Well, up there, I'm just looking at Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday forecast, and like Wednesday there, it's 98 degrees out.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
so that kind of makes sense.
they're 20 degrees warmer right now.
Yeah.
Well, before everybody starts to sign off, which we still have 8 people watching, which is surprising as hell.
Goodness.
I definitely appreciate it. I'm going to pull up the screen of our sponsors right next to our SoCal Kayak Anglers logo. This is on our cover photo of the Facebook page, SoCal Kayak Anglers. There's our sponsors. Help them out if you can. They've always done great things for us and donated a bunch of stuff to the end of the year, giveaways and prizes for the tournaments. They definitely don't. They're losing money on that unless we come in and help them out and help support their business. So get out there, support these smaller businesses that have helped us out.